Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is MIKKEL Thorpe, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today's guest is a fellow Canadian living and working in Costa Rica since 2017 and loving it. He has been selling online in various ways since 1998 when he made his very first website and launched a company selling online craft products. Today, he sells on Amazon and other online marketplaces and helps Amazon and e-commerce sellers design the lifestyle they want with his company selling from the beach. Please welcome to the show, Rob Cosman. Rob, how are you?
Awesome, man. Thanks so much, MIKKEL, for having me. I'm pumped. I'm excited. It's gonna be
I'm
wicked.
excited to have you here. Well, so we kind of been chit-chatting a little bit before the episode started. And Rob is actually Canadian as well, so it was kind of fun to say hello to other Canadians. But Rob, I guess before we get going, why don't you take a minute and kind of walk us through your backstory? How did you get from Canada down to Costa Rica? You know, you were hinting to me some other places you've lived. I want to hear it all.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from St. John, New Brunswick, which is the east coast of Canada, the little maritime provinces. So I grew up there, went to school in Nova Scotia. Yeah, that's when I kind of did my first website and I got the taste of entrepreneurship. But then after I graduated, I went and did my CPA, my chartered accountancy designation. So I did that in Halifax, worked for KPMG. But then, basically, like most people, I had a bunch of student debt and I had graduated and I got my CPA. So I went offshore. I wanted to go somewhere else. And usually people from the East Coast tend to go to Bermuda, but Bermuda is kind of like subtropical. And I was like, it's subtropical and there's some payroll taxes. And then my dad was like, hey, what about Cayman? I hear Cayman's, pretty sexy. I was like, Cayman Islands? That sounds cool. And so I checked it out, had an interview, and, I went and I transferred with KPMG, moved down there. I did 3 years in Cayman, and then met my wife, my now wife. She worked there too. She was actually from Winnipeg. She went down, met her, and we moved to Toronto. After we did 3 years in Cayman, moved up to Toronto, lived in Toronto for about 10 years. And then in June 2017, we finally had engineered everything to, be able to work online, work all for ourselves, not rely on corporate jobs, and pulled the plug and left and moved to Costa Rica. And have been here now. I guess we're on year 5. With my 2 boys, Jackson and Chase, who are 9 and 7. And we're not going anywhere right now. Like we're pretty good. It's pretty nice. It's hot and sunny a lot of the time. I don't miss the cold weather. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny though. I have to say, you're in Caymans and then you left Caymans to go to Toronto. That is kind of like the opposite of everybody else I've ever talked to. They want to, leave cold, wintry Toronto and go down to, the tropics. I mean,
yeah.
Talk us through that a little bit. Why such a decision? Like that's a bit different.
Sure. So Cayman is like a small island. There's 3 little, there's 2 other little islands, but Grand Cayman is the main one. But even still, it's only like an hour to drive basically from one end to another. So I went down and, basically you either go for as an accountant or as a lawyer, or you work in the service industry, bartend, tourism, that kind of thing. But it was fun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we went down and it was like university, except everybody has money. So you've got all these new expats coming in from, South Africa, Australia, the UK, Canada, not many Americans because the taxes didn't really make sense, but everybody all coming in and everybody needs new friends. They don't have those established ties. So it was really fun. It felt like a small town and everybody was always like auditioning for new friends. It was great. So, it was a lot of fun. But the work is boring, like you're auditing investment companies and you don't see anybody maybe trade some emails. Like you sit in an office and just do an audit. And it wasn't really for me. I did more operational companies, which was cool, but, and then I went and I worked for another company. And it was still just kind of like paper shuffling, right? Like just shell companies and they transact some stuff and it's not very exciting. And I've still had that. I want to chase the CFO dream. I want to go after the corporate job and move up the ladder. And, I was still definitely in that. And my wife was a bit too, my wife now. So kind of all of a sudden, a friend of mine from university messaged me and he's like, hey, we've got a mobile phone company in the States. It's coming to Canada. We're looking for CFO. It's cool. It's hip. They were, this was before like iTunes started and they were watching UFC on their phone and things like that. I'm like, this sounds really cool. It's a good opportunity. Maybe get on the ground floor of a startup, that kind of thing. And at the same time, my wife, where she was working, they had opened an office back in Toronto. So it was one of those opportunities like, okay, maybe, were we ready to leave? No. But maybe this was the opportunity to kind of, get in, move your way up. We're still both trying to climb that corporate ladder, I guess.
So when did you decide, like, okay, so you got back into Toronto, you started climbing the corporate ladder, and then something must have shifted. Something must have been like, you know what, this is not for me anymore. So what did that look like? Because I'm kind of projecting here, but I mean, if you were down that path, then why Costa Rica?
So it was one of these, like, we're heading up. And then it just started to head down. Like, we first got there, we're new to the city, we're having a good time. Like, my company was doing all kinds of startups and parties, and it was good. It was just, the two of us, we didn't have any kids, and it was fun. But then the company was a startup, and it ended up, its US parent went bankrupt, and, so that fizzled. And then I went and I took another job for a bit, and that was okay. And then that fizzled. And then I went into consumer packaged goods because I couldn't find a job. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went and I was working at Mars, like M&Ms and Snickers and, all that. That was
also
cool.
As a CFO or?
No. I was just done demand planning. So kind of projections and, so it was a bit of a hybrid. It wasn't fully accounting. So I did that. And then I also did some controller work there. But it's not that exciting, and I was like, okay, so, you're looking at your trajectory and you got to play all these, okay, you need to have a mentor and he has to be more senior and you've got to sit down and talk to him for an hour a month and tell him all your hopes and dreams. And hopefully he solicits you in the politics so you can kind of move up the ladder. And I'm just like, this is terrible, so that, you start kind of getting jaded. My wife is kind of getting the same thing. And, I was also commuting an hour, each way just to get there. The crazy thing was they have this thing. If you work at Mars, they have what they call we called it PB. It was basically being on time. So if there's a clock and you had to swipe in, if you didn't swipe in by 9 o'clock, you lost 10% of your pay that day.
It reminds me of working in the grocery store when I was like 15 years old.
No, like, dude, I'm a senior manager and I have to swipe in. And if I miss it by, 1 minute, then I lose 10% of my pay. Like stuff like that. And they're like, wow, that goes back to the traditions of, Mr. Mars and this and that. And I'm just like, yeah, well, I don't care. Like that sucks. That's not really fun. So it's just like, kind of chipping away at it. And then we had our first son. And once we had Jackson, we're both getting a little jaded with the company, just corporate life. I ended up getting another job as a CFO of kind of a smaller cap cell phone company. So I was like, okay, maybe this is it, like now I'm going to be a CFO. It's publicly traded, it's small, but somebody's kind of, like, okay, good. But I'm still driving like an hour and she's, commuting. And now Jackson was born. And that's when we said, okay, you know what? This isn't long-term for us. What do we want to do? And we still miss Cayman. We miss that fun, the warm weather, the small town feel. Like, we weren't from Toronto. So when you show up to a big city like Toronto, everybody has their established groups of friends. So you're like, it's not like you put out an ad like, hey, I'm auditioning for new friends. Anybody got them? And they're like, man, I got my people from high school, right? So you end up just hanging out with the people you work with. So we didn't have that. And it's just, everybody gets busy in a big city. Like, we had some friends we haven't seen in a while. We're like, hey, yeah, let's get together. And like, how's Friday? They're like, well, this month isn't good. This quarter isn't good. Maybe in 3 months we'll get together for dinner. And you're just like, what? Like, it came and it was like, hey man, what are we doing tonight? Or, like, tomorrow night, somebody's going here. Let's go. Okay. Like, it wasn't, everybody just gets busy. And we didn't like that. So that's when we said, okay, we first started our accounting firm. So we're both accountants and we said, okay, let's just start doing some taxes on the side. We started doing that. And I started selling on Amazon at the same time, just kind of like, okay, could we build those up? We kind of sat down and said, long-term, what do we want to do? We'd like to go somewhere else again. This is for us, the be all and end all. Where would that be? We hadn't decided yet, but we needed to, okay, let's start building towards that. And I remember when I started my CFO job, and I was going through, we were doing proposals and we have directors and, I'm trying to work on an employment agreement and getting a new agreement because mine is crap. And all these directors and the guys on the board, all they did was have their own hands out for themselves. And I was just like, that's when you sit back and I'm like, okay, nobody cares more about me than me. And none of these guys care about me. And they're just going to make sure that they get paid first. And I was like, no, that was just kind of like, no, I got to get out of this. We got to make this work. We need to move. This needs to end. So that's how I went all the way up and then slowly started to come down and,
disillusioned after a certain amount of time. Wow. So, okay. So then let's fast forward a little bit. So you decide that this is not for you. How did you pick Costa Rica? Like, I mean, the world is a big place. Why Costa Rica?
So funny enough, we actually, before we settled on there, we were looking for, when we got married, we decided to do a destination wedding. And after my startup kind of went fizzle, we went on vacation with a friend of mine and his wife, and we came down to Costa Rica. We come here for Easter because at Easter they'll have direct flights from Cayman over. And we're like, oh, Costa Rica is awesome. This is great. Like, I've been to a few places in the Caribbean, but like I've been to Belize, Costa Rica. I was like, this is nice. So then when we were doing our destination wedding, we were looking at all these locations. We looked at Costa Rica, but it was too expensive. And we picked, we went through the whole thing. And then eventually the price dropped on Costa Rica. So we decided to do it. We're like, well, we've been here before. We liked it. So we got married here. And literally, I am living in the same gated community resort area that we got married in. Like, I golf on the hole that we got married on that looks out over the ocean.
Is it a timeshare? Did they get you on a timeshare?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Like,
no,
married and a slot, all in one big present.
Trust me, they are not that organized enough to do that. You and I would think about that, but no. So yeah, so what we did was, we were evaluating, okay, where could we go? And what was important to us, because we had 2 kids at this point now, was I want to be able to be a resident. Like, when we were in Cayman, we couldn't be residents, or you had to invest a ton of cash to do it. And it was just like, you were on a work permit and you never knew the guy that you bumped into or mouthed off at the store, if he was uncle with the guy on the, immigration board. Like, you hear stories like that and you're like, okay.
It's like $700,000 real estate investment or something like that in Caymans for some type of a 10-year residency. And then you have to come back every year and you have to renew, and then maybe, and I've read about this stuff and worked with some clients on it. It's not an ideal situation by any means.
Right. And it's expensive. Like, it's super duper expensive. So we're like, okay, that's not going to be for us. I don't think so. And it's still small. Like, as I said, it's an hour drive, and, there's gorgeous beaches and great scuba diving, but it's not a whole lot more. There's the highest altitude on the island is the trash garbage mountain. That's it. Like, everything else is flat. So we started evaluating, okay, where could we actually live and become a resident? They're not going to kick us out. Decent healthcare, want a decent education. Like, I don't speak Spanish and I barely speak English well, but, I wanted that opportunity for my kids to learn the second language. And, to me, it was, the sooner you could do it, the easier it would be. Mm-hmm. So that was important to us. And, the relative safety, and, as far as like, could you buy a place? Could you invest? Is the government just going to go and seize it all? Or, and how are expats treated and things like that. So as we just started kind of going through, Costa Rica checked a lot of those boxes, and we're also, kind of familiar with it. So as we got a long list, started building the businesses up, we actually did kind of a exploration trip, I guess you would say, where my wife and I came down, we checked out the school, we looked at properties, get a little bit more committed. We actually bought a piece of land. It's kind of like, not just, hey, let's talk about moving, but let's really get a little bit more committed to the idea. Everybody talks about their dreams and, oh, we're going to do that someday and this and that. We're both doers. But we both, still wanted to be a little bit more committed to, okay, this is the ultimate goal. We've invested a little bit into it. So now we're definitely committed, as opposed to, a drunk Friday night and you're changing your goals in your life kind of thing. No, this is it. This is the end game that we want to get to.
So were you and your wife on the same page throughout the same time, or was one of you a little bit farther ahead and the other one was kind of playing catch up? What did it look like, the relationship for you guys moving overseas?
So it kind of changed. So I had got packaged out of my job. Like, I saw an opportunity, and either the CEO or the CFO is going to get fired. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to ramp up my accounting practice. I'm selling more online. I'm like, yeah, make that me. I'll die. I'll take the sword. Don't worry. It's sure enough. So I got packaged out. So then I had a little bit of a runway. But then I had to get really serious about making sure, like, okay, now the side hustles need to become the main hustles. We need to build that accounting business. I need to sell more stuff on Amazon. So we started ramping up, which was good. My wife still had her corporate job, and we were saying, okay, sometime when you get packaged out. So I think we were talking like, I want to say it was like 2024 was the target, maybe, to make the move, or 2022, something like that was kind of our target that we had. This artificial, okay, we keep building it up and going. And then it was 2016 like November, October, maybe it was October 2016. We were still out. I wanted to go sooner. My wife's like, no, the 2022 or whatever. And I'm like, hey, we can go sooner, maybe. And she messaged me and she's like, I think I'm getting fired today. I'm like, what do you mean?
Wow.
She's like, well, I just saw that. So their HR people aren't normally in that office. And she goes, I just saw the HR lady in the hallway and she didn't even say hi to me. And normally they kind of like, very friendly, chit chatty, kind of thing. I was like, nah, you're crazy. 2 hours later, she messaged me. She's like, come get me. I'm done. Got the package. So I'm like, okay. So I pick her up. She's like, okay, yeah, we're moving. We're going. We're going to Costa Rica. And I'm like, whoa, okay. You're like, it's still raw. Like, let's not, overreact. We're talking about it. We're planning it. She's like, no, let's do it. Like, this is it. I'm like, let's just let a couple days go. You're a little mad. Let's just chill. So, it went from I'm the pusher. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go. I don't want to go that far out. I want it a little bit closer to suddenly once she got it, then she's like, yeah, no, let's do it. What's holding us back? Like, let's go now. So that was in November. And then we finished out, basically, we were going into our tax season. So we did all the clients for that tax season. And then in June, we left. And it was like, just a lot of things started to come together. Like we had a truck that was on lease. So the lease was up in May. Boom. Okay, good. Get rid of that. And then the housing market was through the roof in Toronto. It still is now, but it was doing very well. So we're like, okay, we can sell it, no problem. We're in the middle of the tax season. I don't know if it was like maybe February, March. I keep an eye on everything. Like we lived in a townhouse, so they were all the same. So I keep an eye on, who's going on auctions and bids and stuff like that and finding out. So I'd call the agent, 1, 3 or 4 doors down. It just sold, found out what it sold for. It's like, okay, good. Things are hot. Knock on the door. My wife answers it. This lady, she's like, hey, I have clients. We just missed out on the bidding war 3 doors down. You guys want to sell? I'm like, come on in. So that was on a Wednesday.
Literally opportunity knock.
Yeah,
like
exactly right.
Front door.
Yeah. And I knew what the market was and what, had sold and everything. So she came in and I'm like, yeah, sure. You want to do it? I'm like, bring them in. So that was on Wednesday. She brought her clients in Friday, and Friday night they made us an offer and we had a deal done.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then
so wild.
We actually had we had a garage, but then we also had another underground parking spot across the way. So they really didn't care about that. So we said, okay, fine, we'll keep that. So my wife, she just made up a sign, put it on the door entrances. There's 3 of them to the underground. Like, anybody want a parking spot? I'm taking bids. And so she sold it for like $27,000.
Jesus.
Just on a part, like, hey, here, what do you want? And like, she got like 3 people that emailed, like, yeah, here's what I'll offer. And okay, took that. Done. So we sold that and that. It's just like this frenzy, and everything was just kind of lining up. So you're like, okay, you know what? Like, I feel better about it. Like, was it perfect? No. I mean, we had kids, so most of our stuff was all worn out. So, you're just like getting rid of it. Like, oh, you're going to sell this bed? You're like, no way, man. I'm junking that. That's all ripped to crap. The couch. No. So we didn't have a whole lot to move. So it just kind of went really fast. Like, it felt like a blur. But things just started to kind of line up, and, whether we were looking for them or what, but just, we put some things in motion. And, that's what I always say, even to clients now. I'm like, if you can work that side hustle as long as you can, and if you can, your opportunity is to get a package, to get fired, to get a little extra one way, a little extra cash, and then make your move, right? That forces your hand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's going to be happening a lot right now with all these vaccine mandates. And I know that so many people are putting their foot down and saying no.
Yeah, that might be people's exit plan now. If you disagree with the politics or the mandates or whatever's going on, like, hey, take it. I mean, I don't know what it's like in America. I don't think you get as much, but in Canada, trust me, I've gone through we've fired a bunch of people and they all sue you and you go through all this stuff. Like, you get, a month for every year service or 2 or whatever you can negotiate depending on your age. Like, that might be the opportunity to pull the chute.
So, okay. So your kids would have been how old then? Like 5 at the time?
Yeah, so I think Jackson was just turning 6, maybe, or 5, and Chase was 3. He was still in diapers, so we were just like, oh, that's going to be a pain. But then, just as we left, he got out of that, and we were just like, oh, that was amazing. He got out of the diapers. He's like, no, I'm done with it. So then the next hurdle was just for us. Once our biggest stress was making sure that they can swim. We had rented a house and it had a pool, so then that was our stress was, okay, once they can swim, then, we don't have to worry as much. So,
yeah, it's kind of funny, little things like that you might not normally think of, which actually become really big things now when you move overseas, because actually it's super common to have a pool like everywhere. Like every single condo complex here has a pool downstairs. Some of them have a pool like right in your unit itself. I mean, that's not something you would normally see in Canada, but it does happen here. So certainly, like, I have young kids. I mean, we looked at that. We wanted to get a house when we first moved here and decided against it because of the pool issue, because we were afraid. I think my daughter was 3 years old when we moved to Panama. We were worried that she would, somehow open the sliding door, go outside, and decide she wanted to go for a swim. I mean, that's just not something I would have to deal with in Canada. I mean, with 7 months of winter and stuff. So
You did the exact same thing. We had that debate. Do we take this house or not? And then we ended up putting like some additional locks on the sliding door up high so that he'd never be able to reach it. Because, as a parent, suddenly you start thinking about those nightmares and, like it's a legit concern. So as soon as we were there, the first thing we're just like, yes, private swim lessons. Yes, Miss Katie in the backyard. She's going to teach you guys how to swim. Like, we hit it hard and they got it pretty quick. But, because, we were teaching them so much. But yeah, that was, because you go to a beach and, a bunch of restaurants here actually have pools at them. So my kids were ruined for a while. They're like, oh, we only want to go to a restaurant that has a pool, but yeah, then you worry about that too, right?
No doubt, no doubt. Okay, so you move I want to see if I get my timeline straight. You go down, you get married there, then you start looking around, you purchase a plot of land. Then all this stuff happens in Toronto later on, and you decide to come down. Did you develop that land, or you rented straight off the bat and developed later, or the land is still sitting there? What does that piece look like?
Sure. So I think we probably bought the land maybe in like 2015, I think. So we had, gotten married. We didn't think about moving to Costa Rica. We are just doing our thing in Toronto until, okay, get a little bit more serious. Where else would we go? And then put that plan in place. And part of that was then we came down on the exploratory trip, check out the schools. Is this the area? Because this is the only area of Costa Rica we've kind of been to. Does that make sense? We bought the land. I think it was like $60,000 or something. So it wasn't a massive commitment, but it was still, like it's a commitment. So we did that, had it. Okay. It was in a gated community. That worked for us. We're like, okay, this is nice. All standalone houses. We started to, even design things, but so we had that. So we moved down. When we moved, we said, okay, we're going to, maybe build, maybe Marsha was pushing, my wife was pushing more, like, okay, let's start designing it. And she was doing that. But at the same time, I was just a little cautious. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more here. We haven't even looked down Flamingo. I mean, we really haven't explored much. I just don't want to pull the trigger on, a large investment to build yet. And, and I know that nobody has ever told me building in Costa Rica is easy. I don't think, building isn't easy, period. But then you start doing it in, a foreign country, sometimes it's even more difficult. So I was a little gun shy. So we said, okay, we rented a house in the community. It was literally like 4 doors down from our plot of land. So we said, great, we can live here, kind of get the feel of the community. Do we like it? And if we do actually start to build, boom, we'll be like literally right down there and supervise it. I know people that build when they're in other countries and that. I'm like, no, I need to be there every day, like going in, are you guys doing something stupid? Or are you doing it right? I mean, you just want to supervise it. So then we said, okay, I like the community, but there wasn't any kids there. There was a couple of kids, but it was mostly retirees, and our kids are still we weren't sold on it. And then the developer that we were going to use, he like kind of got kicked out of Costa Rica, ran out of Costa Rica, like not good, had to
sound good at all.
Yeah. So, like, whoa, dodged a bullet there,
Yeah,
and then we had some friends that were, he did projects on and didn't turn out well. I think, one of those things, he was doing well. And then I think he kind of got overextended and whatnot. So like, okay, now we're even more cautious. So then we were just starting to look around and we kind of, there was another gated community that was over here with a lot more kids in it. And that's where we got married in Reserva Conchal. So we always just kind of kept coming back to him. We're like, it is really nice. It's a beach club, the golf course, and, I can let the kids run around. I don't have to worry about it. And a bunch of their buddies are here and you're just like, so then we ended up, kind of chance talking to a friend of ours who's a real estate agent again on the beach. And she's like, yeah, I'll show you some stuff. And then one thing fell into another. She's like, yeah, here's one. You really like it. And the developer still owns it. And we're just like, whoa, okay, yeah. So then we ended up buying it, selling our land, never developed it.
Mhm.
haven't looked back.
Did you end up making any money on the first piece of property because you held it for a little bit, or?
Yeah, a few bucks, like, a
Yeah.
couple grand, nothing big, because they instituted some other land transfer taxes and stuff. But we were just like, you know, property sits for, when people were saying like a year, 2 years to sell stuff. So we were just like, whoa, we sold it within, a few months. We're like, ooh, this is great.
Mhm.
But now the market has gone super hot because there's like this buildup of people that just like want to get out of, North America and get down here. So now it's through the roof. So if I probably held it for a couple more years, I've done a lot better. But,
Yeah, but it held
hindsight.
it did its purpose. It was an anchor for you guys to show each other that it was Costa Rica really meant something to you, that it was a strong connection and it wasn't just talk. Like you guys actually did something. Okay, you didn't make $1 million on it, but who cares? I mean, it was that emotional attachment to the place that made things more real, that allowed you to go back and put these things in your place. So when the opportunity came, you knew what you were doing. It was real life and you made the decision. So, I mean, it sounds to me like it worked out well.
Totally. No regrets. I mean, could have gone a lot worse, but it works out. And yeah, exactly to your point. It was the stake in the sand. It was a little bit of a commitment to, no, this is it. Not just Friday night, I hate my job. Let's leave, let's get out of here. No, this is the goal.
Mhm.
And it was a small goal and it was a small commitment, but that's where we're going. That's where we got to.
And Costa Rica, you've been here for what, 5 years now?
Mhm.
Your opinions, do you like it? Is it what you guys thought it was going to be? Does your wife like it? Do the kids like it? What's your opinion at this point?
Yeah, I really like it. I like it. Is it perfect? No. I mean, I don't speak Spanish. I know a little bit and I get frustrated, but my English isn't very good either, but I wish I could be better and I'd like to. The people are very nice. Like you just have to set an expectation. Like our first year, we were doing a lot of residency stuff. My wife prepared most of it ahead of time, so we got it really quick. But like you're going to do a government office, you're like, I'm probably going to do this 3 times. I'm probably going to go to the wrong one because somebody tells me the wrong one. Then I'm going to show up, and then that day it's going to be closed, and then I don't have an appointment or something else. So the good thing is we relied on some consultants and some lawyers to help us. Because like, no, I'll pay you. You waste your time, you figure it out so that when I show up, it's more efficient. So once we kind of got past through that, then we got our housing situation sorted. Then it's good. Like it's relatively safe. Like, we live in a big gated community, I call it. Like it's a resort. There's the Westin Hotel, there's the W Hotel, there's the golf course, and it's really nice. But I don't have to worry about someone kicking in my door and stealing my stuff. That's, for me, that was very important because I have children.
Mhm.
And I don't want to ever have them worry, dad, is someone going to kick in the door tonight?
Yeah,
So,
no doubt.
so that was very important to me. So I mean, it's petty theft. I mean, that's what I hear about. That's what friends happen. But no, I love it. It's good. We're close to the beach, lots of amenities. There's always new people coming. We have some friends that are, been here for a while, which is nice. There's downfalls of everything, but, the kids really like it. You go outside, do a lot of activities. There's a multitude of things to do. It's just, what do you want to do and how much time you want to spend doing it. But no, I'm pretty happy. Yeah, like one of the downfalls is still that in the expat communities, some of it is transient. And, where we are, families will come in for a year. So unfortunately my kids are so resilient. They're so cool. They're just like, yeah, whatever, next kid up, you're my new friend. Like whoever comes in, like, oh, new kids, or even, like tourist kids that are here for, a week or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, you're playing with those kids. What's his name? I don't know. What you guys do? Oh, we play tag, freeze tag, this, that. They just don't care. Right. But, for us, some of that, like you do see people leaving and that's tough. But yeah, I get
So
the
any
pros
local
definitely.
friends, or is it all expat friends there? Is the community have any locals there or no?
Yeah, there's definitely locals, and you've got that. It's pretty good, but there is a large expat community here, and so you got to make that effort. Like, okay, if you want to have friends with some of the locals, how do you meet them and interact? And we have some local friends, but of course they're the ones that are bilingual because my Spanish is terrible. But yeah, it is good, but like you always still just tend to gravitate to people that have similar situations. Like Canadians. You can still talk about Canadian stuff, like my sense of humor, or people that like American football, or like you just, as much as you want to get into it, I still gravitate towards a lot of expats just
Yeah.
because of where I come from and the nature of my work and business and lifestyle, right? But my kids, they play with anybody. I'm like, oh, who's your buddy at school? Khalid. Oh yeah. Does Khalid speak any English? She's like, not really. Like, so you just talk Spanish to them? Yeah. But they won't talk it in front of me. They're really comfortable talking with everybody else. But then I'm like, okay, let's do it. And they're like, no, no, no.
Yeah, I understand that piece completely. Trying to prompt a child to speak another language in front of you, or here, go say something, like never works. So you might as well not even try. The kids will speak when they're ready, and they'll speak, in the appropriate, like I've tried to sometimes switch because I'm quite fluent in Spanish. I try to switch with my daughter and then speak to her in Spanish, and she'll respond to me in English. Now we have a niñera, a nanny that takes care of our kids, and the nanny only speaks Spanish, and my daughter will speak Spanish with her all day long, full conversations, because I can, overhear from the other room them going back and forth and playing and stuff. But I think that the kids kind of get in a pattern of, one parent, one language type of thing, and to switch is unlikely to happen. Maybe later on, but I mean, at this age, I don't think so.
Right. At least you have that advantage where you're fluent in Spanish, so you can. But yeah, I've heard that too. They're like, no, they only reply back in English. And so we try anybody here that speaks Spanish, that's a native Spanish speaker. We tell them, no, you talk to our kids in Spanish.
Mhm.
Like
Absolutely.
that's what you do. And we tell them, like, they want to order a drink, or they want to get something at the restaurant, or they want, their golf clubs, whatever. No, you do it all in Spanish.
Mhm. Well,
Absolutely.
and a side note for everybody who's listening, if you guys go to expatmoneyshow.com/language, you'll find the programs that I use to go from absolute dog shit Spanish to fluent in about 2 years. Highly, highly, highly recommend. It's by my buddy Ollie, and he does an amazing job. And the guy speaks like 8 languages. He's a machine. So expatmoneyshow.com/language. Check out those courses. And Rob, you check out those courses too, because if we get you back on the show, I want to hear about your experiences of opening up and meeting all these new local friends and having tons and tons of conversations in Spanish.
I know, dude. I told you I've been like binge listening to your podcast, listening to one of the guys that speaks the 8 languages, and I'm like so depressed. I'm like, oh, I really got to get better at this. This is making me feel bad.
So the community that you're in, you said it has a golf course, it has the pool, a gated community. The schooling on premise? Is it outside of the community? Is it a local school? Is it an international school? What does it look like for the kids?
Yeah. So we live it's called Reserva Conchal, and it's this big development that's owned by, I call it the beer company, this company called FIFCO, Florida Ice and Co. Or so they own Imperial Beer and Heineken and Pepsi and stuff like that. So it's a big development. It's got a W hotel, it's got a Westin, and then condos and some houses and villas, kind of spread around. So we live in the condos and villas, around here. There's a golf course right on the beach. So there's that. Then literally within 20-minute drive, you've got La Paz, which is international school, Korea is international, Journey, which is the school my kids go to. I think there's Educarte. So all private schools, private international schools, all accredited. So there's lots of options in here. So when we first came down, our kids went to Korea, which was very much plug and play, school uniforms, very North American, boom, did it. And then so they did 2 years there, I think, but now they're at Journey, which is about 20 minutes down the road. Very different. It's, we went from uniforms to no uniforms. Like I had preconceived notions when I first heard about it, that's where the hippies go kind of thing. And I was like, okay, well, let's see. And what happened was when they switched to online and during COVID, the school we were at just fell apart, just did not execute online very well. And then we had some friends saying, hey, Journey's, doing very well, and they're actually accredited and they do everything online, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So I just sent an email to the principal on a Saturday. I'm like, hey, can I come check it out? She will be back in 2 hours on a Saturday. When do you want to come? I was like, this lady's interested. Okay, cool. Went and like, great, Monday morning. So we went, checked it out, talked to her philosophies, what they did. She had a school in the States, I guess, that she just sold off and was franchised, and then kind of fell into opening a school here. Just amazing woman. She's like either had or adopted like 50 kids in her life, her and her husband, they both teach there. And I was like, okay, but you teach stuff, right? And you're accredited, and yes, it's fully accredited. I think it's in California, and I'm like, okay, cool. So let's try it, because I know that this wasn't great. So maybe now, during COVID, and this is the time to do it. So we switched the kids, smaller class sizes, and they love it. It's same thing. Like the kids are just so plug and play, resilient. They're just like, okay, yeah, some of their buddies, actually moved to the school too. So that was good, but they're just so up for meeting new people. But again, it's like 10 kids a class kind of thing, everything from toddler all the way up to,
Big difference than
grade
Canadian
12.
public schools. I remember it was like 32 kids or something when I was young.
Dude, and that was another key point when we went for Jackson, my oldest, for his kindergarten class, and it was JK and SK. They had like the 2 years together, and there was 3 teachers there because they all work a third of a day or something weird. Nobody works like a full day. And I went in and I joked, I'm like, do you even know who my kid is? And they're like, oh yeah, Jackson, because we went to parent teacher. And I was just like, yeah, because there's literally 32 kids in the class and 3 different teachers. And I'm like, you guys really have no idea. Right? You're all just working a fraction of a time. So, that was important to us. We wanted, a small class size and, the bilingualism, and that was one thing. Like the first school we're at really caters towards the expats that are coming in for a year. Mm-hmm. So it tends to be that the kids that come in, like, again, just what I've heard, the kids that are older suddenly coming in and then have to do Spanish, they're not going to learn it in a year. They're, already in grade 8, 10. They're not, really want to do that. So the school wasn't focused on that as much. And that was important for us because our kids were doing hardcore Spanish, like totally 50-50. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to continue that. So, that was important, and I don't want them to lose it. So that's kind of, like different, like nothing's perfect. So it's just trying to figure out kind of what works for your kids and your family.
And what about the price point? Because I know that sometimes Canadians, we get a little bit hung up because we're so used to everything being covered for us and quote unquote free. I mean, obviously it's not free when you end up paying 50% taxes for everything.
Exactly.
But okay, so international school, what were the price points on something like that? Was that a hurdle for you guys to get over to pay for that? Or did it fully make sense to you right off the bat?
I just didn't care. I mean, I've spent a bunch of money on schooling, and, it was like, I think now maybe it's like $700 a child. The other school was maybe like $1,000. It was just a month. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it is what it is. I'm just like, yeah, no, I got no problem with that. Spend a lot more money on a lot stupider things. I think I can spend a few bucks on my child's, education, as long as they're getting a good education. Mm-hmm. And, also, like, another thing is, and I found this, the first school, it's a for-profit. They kind of dance around it a lot, but it is a for-profit. But then all of a sudden there's fundraising, and there's parent teacher, and then we need to raise money for pencil sharpeners for the Spanish department, and there's not enough balls at lunch. And I'm like, no. Charge me an extra $100 and be the end of it. I'm not fundraising. Like, is this what we need? An extra $25 for everybody to get pencil sharpeners? Like, just do it, right? Whereas Journey now is crazy. They're like, okay, here's your bucket of school supplies for everything the kid needs, and when it runs down, someone will deliver, like new supplies, as opposed to like, they're like, oh, get 12 glue sticks. I'm like, how 12 glue sticks? I'm buying a glue stick for everyone in the class, and it really, I didn't understand it. We were buying the markers, and then we took it in, and they're like, oh yeah, don't label those things. I'm like, why not? And they're like, oh no, that's for the whole class. And I'm like, oh, so every parent is going to go out and buy 12 glue sticks if we're going to furnish the whole class. Like little things like that. You're just like, okay, come on, guys, charge me an extra $50 and don't shake me down for glue sticks.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Some of the insights about the schools there. I'm always very, very interested in education. We're actually creating our own online high school because exactly what you described, with expat families coming in for 1 year, 2 years, something like that, and then moving on. We're going to try to solve a lot of those problems with creating our own online junior high and high school, and even a middle school. So it's kind of interesting to hear, your take on what works and what doesn't work and how the pricing and everything happens. But definitely there'll be a lot more information about that on the show when we get the new website coming out, which should be very, very soon. Make sure that you guys subscribe to the newsletter at expatmoneyshow.com, and you'll be able to be the first ones to hear about that. Okay. So on the same point, Rob, about, tax dollars in Canada going to pay for education and things like that. Talk to me about what the taxes look like in Costa Rica for you, especially considering you have a background as a CPA. You probably know and understand a lot more about the way the territorial tax system does than most people who are out there.
Dude, I don't.
I totally teed that up for you. And just like,
no,
nothing?
I know.
You have no idea?
Yes, I do. It's funny though, like, because we came down and still, we sat down with like 2 or 3 different accountants and lawyers, and you go through and you start playing all these scenarios. Cause like, okay, and the rules have changed, but it's like, well, if you make your money online and it's not made domestically, then it's not taxed here. But then if you do services, but if you're selling goods, and everybody just had these shades of gray. And as you know, like every tax jurisdiction is just so, like, everybody wants something from you for the most part, but it's all these shades of gray and where you work. And so for us, it was, we're non-residents of Canada now, because in Canada you tax your worldwide income unless you become a non-resident. So we're non-residents, but like, we still have corporations in Canada that do stuff and pay taxes, and then we've got corporations here. But it's definitely more advantageous to be here than paying 50% taxes in Canada, that's for sure. But the biggest challenge for me is always still just moving the money, because I sell a lot on Amazon, so I have credit cards, and like, just moving money around. And then every once in a while, somebody's like, well, where's the rest of this money coming from? Can you show us the paper trail? Can you do that? That's the difficulty that I always found was getting the cash places, right? But as far as the actual, like, now they've actually had a new rule, and I think I'm sure you're probably aware of it, where you can come down as a digital nomad. You're not going to be taxed on anything. Come down for a year. You won't pay any domestic tax. Like, it's great. That was when we came down. Our path to residency was for, they called it a rentista, where basically you just had to show that you had $2,500 a month in income. So people could do that. They could also do it as a pensionado, which is, if you had pension income, then you just had to show that, and you didn't have to pay the taxes here. And as long as you could show that you had that money, and then you could have the residency. But there's still a lot of people that just come down and file from their home country, and they just come down short term. They do 90-day visa runs. You just walk across Nicaragua and walk back in and get stamped for another 90 days.
Hit and they closed all the borders. Yeah,
that created a lot of panic in some people. But meanwhile, we were sitting pretty, because another reason why we selected here was we wanted to have that residency and didn't want to have to do the border runs. Like, I did it once and it sucked. Oh, yeah. And I don't want to be taking kids across the border. Like, you're leaving the country with nothing, because the whole thing is you just walk out and walk back in. But what if, and I got 2 kids. I don't want to, what if the customs officer's having a bad day and doesn't like the color of my shirt, or whatever. I just didn't want to do that. So the couple times we still had to do them, we flew. We flew to Houston, and we flew, like, made a vacation out of it. But still a lot of people do the border walk. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I'm still like, it's, like, each person's situation is different as far as the taxes. Here, one thing that I did find weird, if you operate a business here, so people would come down and you could set up a business, as an expat, but you could work on it administratively, but you couldn't be like the employee in the shop. So that was a bit of a gray area. Some people set up a corporation and then teach tennis. Is that a gray area? Yeah, it sounds like it. But everything, they instituted what they call like electronic facturas, where you have to send electronic invoices of everything that you sell, and then claim everything that you spend, as expenses. And it all goes through a central government, depository, to figure out, okay, how much tax you should owe, and how much revenue came in, and how much your expenses. And that really kind of, because that's different in Canada. You just do your records and then they audit you and go through it. But this was actually, everything was going through a central government. So that kind of surprised me a bit. But I don't know if it was, I wouldn't want to try to operate a business here. I say to the guys that do, I'm like, the guys that runs restaurants here, and I'm like, it's difficult. There's a lot of paperwork and municipality, and things are inefficient. And
Mhm. I have a lot of clients who come to me and, they're thinking about Costa Rica, they're thinking about Panama. We talk through some of the tax obligations. Okay, yes, they're both territorial tax systems, but one is quite gray and the other is black and white. I mean, Panama is very straightforward. You can see the laws, you can cite the laws on exactly how it works. It's been tested. We've gone through the lawyers with it, and it's really nice and clean. For me, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I don't want to be in any type of gray zone or coming back to me years from now, saying, oh, you owe, this much in taxes. Oof. I mean, no, thank you. I want to know exactly what I'm doing and exactly how it's supposed to work. So that's interesting to hear some of your experiences and what has happened with some of the other expats that are there.
Yeah, it's, like I agree. Like, and that's what I'm an accountant. So I'm like, yeah, black and white. I know there's shades of gray and, interpreting taxes and different codes. But yeah, that's the thing here. You talk to like 3 or 4 different people and, all experts, all big firms and, not just like, the guy at the corner, but, people are supposed to, and you're just like more confused than anything.
Well, and so then the visa is also very interesting because usually a lot of the people will come in under a real estate investment. So they'll make a purchase of, say, $200,000 real estate investment. They can get their visa through that way. The other big one that I've read about, or actually have some friends that have done, is putting $60,000 into a Costa Rica bank account. And then from that, drawing basically a salary. They block off the $60,000 and then $2,500 a month for 3 years. And it goes, that's kind of like the pension, kind of type of scheme. From my understanding as well, what ends up happening is technically by the law, you can do it with any bank in the world. It doesn't have to be a Costa Rican bank. But what in actual fact, no other bank in the world is going to do this because it's just such a weird thing. Like if you went to, your local bank and you said, okay, I'm going to give you $60,000. I want you to block it off. And then I want you to pay me a check of $2,500 every month. And I need a contract for that. I mean, the other banks will look at you sideways, like they're not going to do this, write in an entire contract for $60,000. But the Costa Rican banks are completely comfortable with this. So it's very, very standard. And I have guys who are, 20 something, have put away a little bit of money and got their permanent residency. And from my understanding as well, once you make the application for permanent residency, you can actually stay in the country because you get a bridging visa. So you don't have to keep doing these visa runs in and out of the country, which I've done in other countries before and are very stressful. And I mean, I've never had to do it with kids. Luckily, everywhere that I've lived since I've had kids, I have a permanent residency to be there. But when I was, 15, 20 years ago, I did do some visa runs and they suck. I mean, they just suck.
Oh yeah. You don't sleep the night before. You're a little nervous. You just because, I know everybody's done it, but you have 1 or 2 people that, have a bad story and you're just that little bit of nervousness. Nope.
Well, and I think that sometimes immigration will make a horror story out of someone because you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be gaming the system like this. So if they can just put a little bit of scared out there into the industry or into the marketplace, then everybody kind of knows, all right, you have to be really careful about this and you might get turned away. Or like I said before, look at what happened with COVID. I literally had friends who'd been living in Panama for 10 years, never made the effort to go out there and get their friendly nations visa because they were traveling so much. They were going back and forth from the country. Then COVID hit, closed the airport to all non-residents and non-citizens, and their house sat empty for like months and months and months. Imagine if you had a pipe break or something like that and you can't get back into the country. You don't have no one has a spare set of keys. And it's like, you just don't know what's happening to your place. And now you're staying at a hotel or you have to rent some short-term place somewhere else. It's like, do it the proper way. Get your residency, figure this stuff out. Don't just be a cowboy and just hope that everything is going to be okay. I mean, be a little bit more strategic about this stuff.
Totally. And even when I did like the one time I went across, I was like a couple days late on my 90 days. So I'm nervous about that because by the time I scheduled it and I didn't know where I was going. So I found a couple ladies that were there and they looked like they knew where they were going. So I went up to them right away. I'm like, you've done this before, right? They're like, yeah, like all the time. I'm like, great. I'm following you wherever you go. Because, like you don't even know exactly where to go. And they're like, oh, you got to go to this little shop down here and pay your $2 exit tax or something. So literally, so I'm standing in line in Nicaragua and there's a group of people in front of me and they take their passports to the side. And then there's a little old lady that comes up and cuts in front of me. And I'm like, yeah, go. Who cares? Like, sure, little old lady. Like, I'm not gonna tell you like it's my turn. So she goes, and then then there's this woman behind me, and she's like, yeah, you need to get up there. And not letting everybody cut in line. I'm like, okay. And then there's a woman, she had a child. She came back to the customs desk, asked a few more things, obviously had some issues, left. Then they grabbed the people that were in front of me. They brought their passports back. And this woman behind me is like, yeah, this guy needs to get up there. And she pushed me. And
Like
I'm
shoved
like,
you from behind.
gentle one.
Okay.
I was like, push my backpack. I'm like, lady, please stop. And then these people, they dealt with them. And then this other lady came back again. Like, all people that were ahead of me just had issues. And that happened again. And then she's like, no, yeah, you need to get up there. And she pushed me harder. And I actually, had to take a step. So I did the calm turn around in a very low voice and told her, if she ever touches me again. I wasn't very nice about it, but I was very calm and straight eyed at her. And her eyes just kind of took back, like. So we went through, finished my thing. She was on the bus with me because we did a bus tour down. She gets on, she comes up, she's like, I'm sorry. She goes, I thought about it. I thought what I did, I thought what my son would say, like, mom, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I told her, I said, okay, I respect that you apologize, but I said, lady, we are in a foreign country doing something kind of gray, these visa borders, and you're in the middle of here pushing me and getting angry about people cutting. You need to chill out. Like, again, add to my panic, right?
Yeah. Stressful situation for everybody, going through something like that. I mean, it's so different than, margarita madness going down to Mexico, crossing the border, that's so different, going on vacation opposed to, hey, if they don't let me back in, I don't get to go home and I've got clients waiting and my kids got to get to school tomorrow and all of this stuff, that you actually have to put on pause. And it's like, you start thinking through all those things. So I understand that it can be a very stressful situation. The answer is, educate yourself on the visa processes in the country, work with a local professional, work with the lawyer or the immigration specialist, go through it so you don't have to go through this kind of stuff. Because you do hear horror stories all the time, all around the world, different countries. And it's like, just do it the right way, guys. It makes life much easier.
For the sake of spending a few $1,000s to get consultants to help you who've done it a lot. And even then, the things change. So it might have worked, last month or whatever, but they can figure it out because guess what? They do a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I way rather, I get somewhere and there's an issue. Guess what? I pull out my phone, I open it. Yep. Here's my lawyer. Here's my consultant. You talk to them. Yep. And then, like, okay, great. This is what I pay you for, to be on speed dial. 100% worth it. No way.
Absolutely. Yep. I think that lots of times people think that they can just watch a couple of YouTube videos or read a blog article and they're going to be able to do this stuff. And I'm like, God, like, I do this for a living. I mean, this is what I do, is help people with immigration issues. And when I go to a new country, I work with local representation. I worked with local representation in Brazil, got halfway through it and still couldn't get through the entire process, even working with locals. If I didn't have them, I wouldn't have even gotten halfway. I would have gotten nowhere. I mean, and like I said, I do this for a living. I really understand this stuff and I still get help with it. So, that's just a lesson for everybody listening to work with someone who knows what they're doing, work with local representation or a service provider who at least can put you in touch with the lawyer who's on the ground. Like, I know enough about like 1,000 different programs that are out there. But then when it comes to the finer details, I have my lawyer who works there and then I liaise with the lawyer on my client's behalf, or we do group types of calls and go through that. But yeah, reading a blog article or watching a YouTube video and doing something serious like this, it just makes me scratch my head. Okay, so I want to come back to your experiences in Costa Rica. So you left your big corporate jobs, you moved down there, you found a place to live, got the kids in school. Talk to me about your business itself, because you are not a retiree, you are not independently wealthy, 100 millionaire, billionaire, and just living off of your investments. You work for a living, like I do, like most people do. So talk to me about your business, how that looks, living in a foreign country, and what has it been like as a transition, I suppose, from going to a 9-to-5 office to now, I assume, a home office?
Yeah. So it was it was a home office for a while as I started to transition from my corporate job. And, like we would do tax returns at the dinner table, at night, or I'm packing boxes for Amazon in my garage. That's, the kind of the two main businesses that I've done. So then it just, you know, making the move down here over the years, we took, when we first started our accounting business, we were putting up posters on, telephone poles, like $99 personal tax returns. Like, I just got to eat, right? I'm trying to get clients. I don't know what I'm into, just whoever, like, hey, I saw this ad. Perfect. I'll do your taxes. But then I was also selling on Amazon, and then some Facebook groups started to come up with, people talking about selling. And then one person was like, oh, I need an accountant. I'm an Amazon seller. You understand Amazon sellers because you sell. Yes, I do. Okay. And then that became our niche. And then we really just niched down on Canadian e-commerce, Amazon sellers, and all across the country, because they wanted someone who understands Amazon. I mean, an accountant can file a tax return, but I'm like, I can tell you what invoices to get, how to pull the sales reports, how to, plus I'm also telling you about what's going on and selling and issues and, insurance requirements for Amazon, whatever. That's what I do. So they were already all across the country. They're all tech savvy. They all like internet, email. I've got people that, English isn't their first language, so they want to communicate on emails. So that was probably the ideal client base to have to make that transition, because they're all about just trading emails and doing everything online and all across Canada as it was. So that worked out well. And then when, I'm like, yeah, I'm moving to Costa Rica, that's also the aspirational goals that a lot of them do have. Mm-hmm. So if anything, that was even cooler. They're like, yeah, man, my accountant's doing it. That's awesome. But then the other business, Amazon, where I would buy stuff and pack it and ship it back in, I had slowly started to phase myself out. Like when I first started, I'm buying, like I do a lot of toys and shoes and stuff like that. And I just flip them. They call flipping. So I just buy it from a website. I buy it from Walmart, this Lego set, and I sell it on Amazon for a profit. So then I started to, what I had was my cleaner. She used to clean our house once a week, I think. She started to pack some products for me. And she babysat then and packed products and cleaned our house and transitioned until eventually, she doesn't work for me full time, but almost full time. She handles all my stuff in Canada. So I buy stuff, have it sent to her house. She works out of her basement, pretty much full time for me, does a couple other little things. But, that's how I transitioned to, okay, I can't do anymore. So now I do the buying online, and I do some coaching and video tutorials and that kind of thing. But she handles everything. Then I've also got a couple of what they call prep centers. So there's businesses that will actually receive your products and send them into Amazon. So I've got 2 of those in the States and 1 in Canada I use on top of that lady. And yeah, I just, it forced me to get a little bit more systemized, get, the prep centers in order, get, my documentation a little more cleaner, and, like Google spreadsheets and things like that, because I wouldn't be able to see anything. I wouldn't be able to, put my hands in. Even, my helper, she'll have an issue with her computer, and she's, not super tech savvy, but enough. I can use TeamViewer and I can take control of her computer and, try to figure out some things like, oh, this stopped working or the label start printing. And you're just like, well, guess what? I'm not there. So if you can't solve it, then, we have to figure out how to solve it together. And, so it's just kind of, trying to, as we were going, remove anything that requires my physical presence, figure out, okay, how do I do that without us being here? Getting more organized, whether it's sharing files, just working online, setting up, calls, because I do all my calls on Zoom. I've got online booking for clients or paid calls. I only do those on Tuesdays and Thursdays so that I can still get work done, because, like they do cut up your day. So just getting a little more systematized to, like a schedule. And also, we were now making enough money that I didn't need to be trying to do calls on Saturdays and calls at night. And, because when you first start, you're like, dude, I just need to make some money. Sure. You want to have a call at 9 at night? Sure. Okay, I'll do it. You're willing to sacrifice it. But then after a while, you're like, no, this is when I take calls. They're from 9 until 2 because I pick my kids up from school.
I do 12 till 4:30 or 12 till 4. That's kind of my my window that I'll take phone calls.
Right. But do you drop your kids off at school, or do you have them on, like, there's certain things you probably organized your life schedule around that are important to you now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's not what I'm saying. Like, I don't like to start my workday before noon. I mean, I'll do stuff in the morning for myself, or I'll do my education, or I'll do my exercise and things like that. But I mean, I'm not taking phone calls usually before 12 o'clock. And, it's so nice when you actually get to a point in your business where things are systematized, where it's like, you don't have to have your phone calls all over the place. I know people who are do like 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and they just ram them packed with all of their phone calls. That's amazing. But I have been in the exact same situation as you. And it's like, it's Saturday at 7 p.m. and I'm taking a phone call because I got to hustle. And that's what it requires. I mean, the client, that's what they have available. And, do I want the business or do I not want the business? But at a certain point, when you get those systems in place, you can be a little bit more purposeful about these things. So I think you're right.
Yeah. And you're also, depending on your type of business, you're going to evolve. At first, like I was taking anybody I can. Now I get more picky, and I've also raised my prices too.
Mhm.
So, it's like, okay, well, I'm still trading some time for money because I am an accountant, and, people want to hire me. They don't want an assistant or anything. I don't have a big team because I don't want to do that. I don't want to manage a bunch of employees and stuff. So, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, I charge more, have less clients, but guess what? The ones that tend to pay more are less of a pain in the butt. Or if I can tell right away, I'm getting better at this, I can figure out, you're probably not going to be here next year because you think you know it all and you're telling me how it all works. Yeah, no, I know more about this than you do. And this probably isn't going to be a good fit. But, when you first start out, you're just like, I know it. I've seen it. I took clients that I'm like, I just need the money. I need to get this flowing. This is probably not a good fit. It'll probably backfire on me, but who cares? I'll do it because, you got to get that ball rolling, get that momentum.
Sell cheap stuff, get cheap clients. I mean, that's what it is, as sad as it is. I mean, I've sold $20 ebooks online, and I've sold $10,000 consulting packages. It's less work to work with the clients on $10,000 coaching packages than it is, back and forth. Someone didn't get their PDF or something like that. And, I've had the nastiest emails because, they didn't get their product exactly on time, or, it came in late or something. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. Yeah, for me, working with good people who respect the information, who actually listen to what you say and hire a professional, that's definitely the way to go. Absolutely.
Yeah. And they have more vested interest. You spend $10 on a PDF, maybe you open it, maybe you don't. I know how I do it. Yeah. But if I spend 2,500, $5,000 on something, I'm focused. I'm putting dedicated time away to do it, and I'm going to learn it's going to work. Like I have a masterclass, $2,500, but I'm like pulling, like, hey, what else can I give you? Here's what you need. Go do this. Go buy this right now. You will make money, and sometimes they're like, yeah, I haven't looked lately, this. And I'm like, no, I'm trying, like, do it, even still, I want you to succeed, but I'd much rather spend time with that, $2,000-$3,000 person than, as you said, the guy for the $10 PDF because it went to a spam promotions folder.
And that is usually what happens as well. It's like, did you check your junk folder? Oh, there it is. It's like, and you're going to rage at me? Like, I mean, go complain to Google and Gmail or your Hotmail account from, 1997 or something. Like,
oh yeah, but even on, like my thank you pages, because I have some lower ticket items on the thank you page, I put a copy and paste, like, here, look here on Google and promotion spam, make sure it's not here. The email will look like this. You will get it. Trust me, Yeah,
that's what I'm going to put in. If I do lower price products, that's definitely what I'm going to be putting into place for sure. So, okay. So the main business that you do is still the accounting work for Amazon sellers, or you're coaching people now on Amazon? Because we've talked about two different businesses here.
Yeah. So I sell on Amazon. So I still buy toys and shoes and stuff like that, like weekly, and I'm continuing to sell. But I have the accounting business, which is, we still do a lot of, but this year we really started doing more higher end coaching because I would see a lot of people coming in, and particularly one thing so a lot of people come in, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube about private labeling, they call it, where basically you go to Alibaba and you buy this piece of junk and you put your own brand on it and you try to sell it, right? And I'm seeing people come in and they're losing their shirts. They buy a course and, they've got 10, 15, 20K in, and it's a salt and pepper grinder that's terrible, and it's just, and they lose their money. And I'm like, no, online arbitrage, what I do makes money. And the clients that I see that continue to grow year over year. So, at the start of COVID, I started going through and filming videos, how-to tutorials to build up this ultimate course that would say, okay, this is my signature course because, I wanted to give people an option because I know it will work. So that's kind of how I went down, and I've started to do more of that. So it's really seasonal. Like we'll still do taxes, and that tends to be very seasonal. I've spread people out a little bit more. So there's that, which is a big chunk. The Amazon business is kind of always going, selling, but the coaching is definitely ramping up now. But again, people got to find me, like.
But it's interesting because, I mean, you're coaching people how to do something that you've actually done in your real life. It's not a textbook. It's not theory. I mean, you did it. You transitioned. You've lived around the world. You moved your family. This has supported you. Now you're showing other people how to do things that you did. And it's like, if you do what you've done, they'll get the same results. I mean, sometimes people want to think that it's like magic fairy dust or luck or, hopeful, wishful thinking. It's like, no, I mean, there's formulas for these things. And if you do it and if you follow the instructions, you will get the same results. And this goes back to our early point about working with professionals. I mean, work with someone who actually knows what they're doing. So I think what you're doing is excellent and very, very important in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I know what works because when I first started, I didn't have courses available or Facebook groups or whatnot. Like I have a Facebook group now and I share my information, but I, can teach people, and I know it works. Like I've done it, and it doesn't require like I'm not going to teach how to run an accounting firm. Like that takes some skill, and I went to school for a lot of it. But like I can teach you how to find stuff on sale and flip it on Amazon, and with some tools and some know-how, and build up your confidence and show you how to do it. Check the boxes, follow this process. It works and it's scalable. You can start this from your kitchen table, for like only a couple $100. Like you don't need to invest $10,000 on your own product to bring it over. Just flip some things from Walmart to Amazon. It's real simple. But and that's what gets me excited. Like even just talking to you about it, I get excited because I know it'll work and how it's changed people's lives and what they could do. Because I see it even in my clients, that I do accounting for, like one girl, she's like worked her crappy administrative job for years. And, she's like, Rob, can I quit my job now? And I'm like, absolutely. Of course you can. You got, a ton of cash in here, a ton of inventory. You made all kinds of money. You've rolled the profits over for 3 years. Have at it, like it's exciting to see the success and see the wins, but.
Well, and then when you add this aspect to expat life and you realize how much more affordable living overseas can be than living in North America. And it's like, if you're making a few grand a month, like you don't have to be making $50,000 a month, $100,000 a month. I mean, just a few grand, you can actually move down to Central America, Latin America, have an amazing life, reconnect with your family, learn a new language, strengthen the bonds, spend more time with your spouse. And, having an online business gives you this type of opportunity. So I'm always encouraging people to take the step to learn these types of things. I mean, it takes a little bit of work. You got to finagle it a little bit. You're probably going to have to learn some secondary and tertiary skills that you probably didn't think about in the very first place. But start putting the time in now, because those days of, have one job, work at it for the next 40 years, then pull out your pension and retire. I mean, those are gone. Like they are gone, and they are never coming back. I mean, the riskiest thing that you can do right now is have one job and have all of your money from one source. Okay, if you have some type of an online business, yes, it can be one business, but you have thousands of clients or hundreds of clients and money coming in. If you're selling products, you can sell it across different marketplaces. And so many different people out there have an opportunity to purchase these types of things. And if you're just making a couple of $1,000s a month, you can actually start your expat journey now, not in 10 years from now. Like you said earlier, in 2015, 2016, thinking about moving overseas in 2024, and you ended up doing it, in 6 months or a year or whatever it was. You had that opportunity because you had put the time and energy and effort into building the online businesses and those second streams of income at the very beginning. So good for you, Rob. I think what you're doing, as I said, is super, super important.
Yeah, thanks, man. Like it's there. It's, people, it doesn't require big efforts to start the ball rolling. As you said, like I'm talking about just buying some things on Amazon. You don't need your own customers. Amazon has them. You don't have to even talk to people. Oh, I'm not good with people, or I don't want to talk to people on the computer. You don't need to. You just basically go and buy items, have them delivered to your house, send them in and sell them for a profit. Wait till they sell, collect the money. Like, I don't care if you're 18 or you're 68, like, this is something you can do with a little bit of internet skills. And it doesn't need to be tens of thousands of dollars. A lot of people with a couple extra $1,000 a month income makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, how many people have gone out there and decided, okay, I want to change careers. Therefore, I have to go back to university, get another full degree or do their master's or the MBA or something like that. And it's like, really? Like, that's really where your mind is going now? I mean, look at the opportunities that are out there. And as I said, learning from real people who have done real things. I mean, that is the secret formula. Enough with, going to university and learning from someone who's never done it before in their real life, especially for entrepreneurship. Like, oh my God, it makes me so sad when I see this over and over and over again. Yeah.
No, I agree. We have this debate with my kids, with my wife and the kids. We're saving for the education and college, university, and I also play devil's advocate sometimes. I'm like, do they really need to go? And then so we're both on the same, that our kids need world experience, and they need, like, we're giving them that, but they also need that independence. Like, I know when I went to university, there's that independence that's there. Suddenly I got to do my own laundry all the time, very simple things like that. Suddenly, and I can do whatever I want, but that's how you learn and grow as a person. So, coming up with different ways for them to do that. But I always argue, I'm like, I could give them some, $10,000 worth of high-end courses right now, and that'll teach them way more than I learned in my 4 years doing my business degree from the guy who used to work 10 years ago at Boeing. Like, what does that guy know? These are entrepreneurs that are doing it. Plus, my kids come in and see what I'm doing now. We look at toys and we look at things that I'm selling, and, like, they're around it. So I think that they will.
Capital. I mean, imagine you took, okay, what's the price of an education in the United States right now? For top school, 100, 150K, something like that. Most families don't have that in cash where they're going to be able to pay for it. Some do, most don't. So the kid's going to end up having to take out student loan. Then they walk into a job where nobody's hiring at the moment anyways, because you can outsource a lot of the work. We can get people from India, from the Philippines, from Mexico, from many other countries in the world who will do it better and cheaper, and they're more hungry. They have a better work ethic. So what if you took you don't even have to take all of the money. Take a percentage of the money. Take 10%, take 15K and go, here you go. What are you passionate about? Start a job, start a business, build it up, blow it up, doesn't matter. But that would be a real education. I mean, problem solving, all of these types of things, or about the personal responsibility and independence. Take that 15K and be like, okay, here, go to Europe for 4 months, go backpacking, have a trip, take care of yourself, go out there and explore the world. I mean, that is an education in self-reliance and in confidence. I mean, there's so many other things that people can do besides traditional education. Okay, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a dentist. All right, go to university for sure. I don't want a dentist who never went to school and just decided he wanted to play with other people's teeth, in his spare time. All right, I'll grant you that one. But you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to build a business, I'd really argue that university is not the best place for you. There's better opportunities out there.
Even now, like my son Jackson was doing, he was doing a class project, and he's using Canva, and he's designing his menu for his pizza parlor and his pricing and stuff like that. And I'm like, yes, this is good. One, you're learning how to use Canva, which will be important. And two, you're like learning, some design. And I'm like, yes, this is good. This is the kind of stuff I want you to learn. Like, okay, great.
Well, and then a small note on Canva before we move on is that's a $12.95 piece of software. I use Canva. They have a free version. I use a paid version. I do a lot of my own graphic design. And if I have a complicated project, then I'll hire someone else to do it. But then I have an eye for it, and I can go, no, this is not good. This is not good. This needs to be changed. I actually sometimes hire people to build templates for me in Canva so I can go in and modify them as I need, opposed to having to send an email to someone and explain to them in words what I want done. But I mean, basic graphic design software, which actually you can create magic with, that is a real life skill, knowing how to do graphic design. And you don't have to do all of it, but having that type of skill. Like,
it
Kids
sounds
need
like
to know these types of things. Like this is really, really applicable for the future. Like university, what's being taught right now, not to continue to harp on it, well, a little bit, because I'm really against this kind of stuff. But the skills that are being taught right now, in most instances, in 10, 15 years are not going to be there. I mean, the jobs are not going to exist. Things are being replaced. AI, blockchain, robotics. I mean, the whole industry, the entire world is changing. So it's like, okay, let's get prepared in real life skills that'll actually make a difference in someone's life.
Yeah, and that's what I tell my kids all the time. You need to learn to market and sell. You have to be able to sell yourself. You have to have enough confidence to talk to people. And those are the main skills. If you can do those, then no, that's what I need you to focus on. And that's what you need to grow with. Because and not relying on one employer. Like I've seen it. I've seen it in my accounting clients, and people packaged out. They're like, yeah, I worked there for 12 years, 15 years, 20 years. Or guys that, get fired like every couple of years, like, oh, downsized again, got packaged out. Just like, nobody cares. They literally just like open up. Okay, great. The top, who's been here the longest? Haircut. Great. The top 10%, they get fired this year. No one cares anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your family is a prime example of that. You told the story about what happened to your wife. She went into work, completely normal day. All of a sudden calls you in the afternoon, Rob, come and get me. It's like, wow. I mean,
she worked there for 12 years.
That's mad, eh? Like, that doesn't happen if you own your own business. Like, I mean, no one gets to do that to you. You make the rules. And I mean, you don't have to build these companies with 100 employees. I mean, usually a solopreneur or maybe one or two VAs, I mean, is enough to have a nice income. You can live overseas. You can be an expat. Amazing. Rob, I love it. Amazing conversation today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences of living in Caymans, living in Costa Rica, everything that's happened with your family and your successes in building your business. If my listeners want to find out more about what you do, if they want to get a hold of you, where can we send them?
sellingforthebeach.com. That's the main hub. You can join my free Facebook group. I've got my courses there, my free training. If you're looking to just get started selling on Amazon, I got a free course from the main page there that, look, just, $40 a month, open an Amazon account. That's your commitment. $40 a month, open a professional seller's account. And then at least you're a little bit committed. Go buy some stuff. It could open up a whole world.
Absolutely. And no one has an excuse at that type of price point. I mean, forego the bottle of wine or the pack of beer this weekend, go invest in yourself, make that commitment, anchor yourself. A small commitment on these types of things will have massive rewards. Exactly what we've been talking about today. Rob, thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Bill. It's awesome, buddy.